Hi everyone, it's Ranger Kate, and today we are going to be talking about the different parts of a flower. It's finally spring outside, and that means that some wildflowers are starting to bloom. Now, flowers can be very different, not just in color, but also in shape and how their different parts are arranged. It can all get a little complicated and confusing, so today we are just going to be talking about a common flower, a daffodil, and learning about its different reproductive parts that are pretty much the same across all types of flowers. Now, the daffodil that I will be dissecting and taking apart to identify its different parts, I got from the landscaping outside the park's visitor center. And before you go out and clip any flowers, be sure you have permission to do so. And so with that, let's go take a closer look. Here we see the daffodil up close. First, we have the thick green stem. It almost looks like a straw because it is hollow inside. Next, we'll talk about the brown, dried up piece below the flower, which can be called a bract. A bract is kind of like the sleeping bag the flower is in before it emerges. The next two parts can sometimes be confused with each other, and it is hard to tell the difference here on the daffodil, so I'll show you some different examples. A sepal is usually green, but sometimes it can be colorful like the petals. It is a leaf-like structure that protects the flower bud. Petals are leaf-like, often colorful parts of the plant that surround the reproductive parts of the flower. The petals are the colorful structures that help the flower to attract pollinators. Here on the daffodil, the petals are a cream color and this bright yellow. Here on the daffodil, this inner set of petals that are bright yellow is called the corona. The next set of parts are the male reproductive parts. Together, these are called the stamen. The stamen produce pollen grains. The stamen consists of a filament and an anther. The filament is the yellow and white straight pieces that you see here. The filament supports the anther. The anther forms pollen grains. It is that golden color piece that looks like a grain of rice. Pollen is the fine powder dust that contains the sperm from a male plant, and pollen can be found on top of the anther. The female reproductive parts make up the pistil. The pistil is comprised of three parts: the stigma, style, and ovary. The stigma is sticky and captures the pollen from other flowers. Sometimes the pollen is carried on the legs and abdomen of pollinators, such as bees, butterflies, or hummingbirds. The stigma is where pollen grains land on the pistil. We'll go back to that close-up photo from earlier so you can see the stigma even better. The style is this long center point that connects the sticky stigma and the ovary at the bottom of the style. Pollen grains travel to the ovary via the style. It sort of looks like the filaments, but it is much larger and in the center of the flower, and there is only one style. And if you noticed, we had multiple filaments. The ovary is the lower, often enlarged part of the pistil, which contains the egg cells and produces the seeds. The ovary becomes the fruit. Inside the ovary, we can see ovules. Ovules are found inside the ovary, and they will eventually develop into seeds after fertilization occurs from the pollen reaching the ovary. Finally, this process we are talking about, in which pollen from the anther of a stamen is transferred to the ovule of a pistil, this is called pollination. Let's take a look at pollination on these daffodils. Now that we've learned the different vocabulary for the parts of a flower, Go outside, see if you can find a flower, and observe it. See if you can identify some of the parts. And join us in our next activity where we will be learning how to make our own flower with materials we can find around the house.